So I'd like to show you another method of making bias strips, but in this method what we're going to have happen, which is kind of unique, is it's actually going to be sewn. All your strips will be sewn as you cut, so it does save a step. It's a little based on origami, so kind of follow me along here. What you're going to first do is you're going to have a piece of fabric, and it can be any size, and you're going to take the fabric and you're going to fold it right sides together. So what I have here is my fold line. So this is of course twice the length that's pictured here because it's folded, fold line. And along here what I've done is I've sewn 1/4 of an inch stitching line from the edge. My stitch length is probably going to be around a 2.0, and I did highlight it with a little fabric marker just so hopefully you can see where I stitched. So again, the folded line is not stitched, it's just stitched on these 3 raw edges here. And so once that's been done, what you're going to do is you're going to take that square, or rectangle I should say, and you're going to take a ruler and you're going to, with a fabric marker, mark from corner to corner, and then you're going to flip it over, and the second time that you're going to mark from the opposite side. So in essence, the first side was marked from here to here, and when we flipped it over, the other is marked from here to here. So what in essence happens is you make a square, so or an X. So the next thing that's going to happen is we're going to take the raw edge, the corners I should say, and we're going to cut them here and here, here and here, and we're just cutting off the corner just deep enough so that I can get my scissor point in like this and proceed to cut from one side, flip it over, insert my point of my scissor again, and cut to the other side. So when that's accomplished, what you're going to find is you have in essence the same square. Let me just orient this again. Here once again is the folded edge, and here again are the sewn edges. And now, as I had mentioned, I took my scissor and I've cut through this way. You can see it's now cut. And then on the opposite side, I did the exact same thing and cut this open. And what's happened miraculously is this has now become a bias tube. So as you can see, there's nice stretch to it. I have 1/4 of an inch seam allowance here, and what I would do at this stage is I would press it as sewn and then press it on the ironing board to one side so that when we do cut out the bias strips, the seam allowance is already pressed down. So once I've had the bias tubed form, what I'm going to do is make some marks on the fabric. Now, in this particular example, what I've done is I've marked at the very center of this bias tube and then proceeded to mark in increments what the finished width of my binding is going to be before I would fold it. In this case, this particular binding I've done is at 1 3/4 inches. I'm also going to, off of one of the folded edges, draw another line here approximately 6 inches. And we're going to see the purpose of that in just a moment, but it's to give us a tube. So I can at this point take a rotary cutter and cut along these lines up to the 6-inch mark in each instance, or I could absolutely use scissors instead if that's my preference. But again, I do not want to cut beyond that mark here that is again 6 inches from that folded edge. So once I have all of this cut, what's going to happen next is I'm going to have these little flanges. And again, each of these flanges are at my finished width of my binding at 1 3/4. Notice how all of my joins, once again, are already sewn. And what I've done here is I've pressed these open. And what I want to do next is I'm going to actually open the tube up, and you'll see that I have a section 12 inches long that is yet to be cut. Now, one way that I could do this is I could start on one side here and just cut off the edge here, because I need to start this as a spiral, and then I could proceed to cut subsequently at 1 and 3/4 of an inch, or whatever that width is. This is my preferred way to do it, and I already had one started here, so let me show you how this is going to work. So once again, this has been cut. I pre-cut just so that it finishes off at the edge, and this is now opening up a spiral of fabric. So I'm going to take this and my measurement tool here, again at my 1 3/4 inches, and I'm going to continue until I get to, again, that 12 inches of space that hasn't been cut, and I will line this up and take my scissor and cut, reposition along the edge and cut, reposition along the edge and cut, reposition along the edge and cut. And then as I get back to the cut edge that I had done previously, you'll see that this is going to line right up, and I finished the cut there. I would then proceed to follow this around, and as you would have guessed, once again, this is a spiral. I would proceed to start to cut this now open. And as I continue around here, this would finish off the last bit of that spiral. And then as I opened it up, I would now have bias, nice stretch, at my chosen width. All of the joins are made and pre-pressed. Doesn't get easier than that.